Introducing a new concept of sentence diagramming that you learn by drawing. This is the second video. In the previous video, we covered how to diagram these 6 parts of speech, and also how to diagram these sentence elements, such as objects, complements, and modifiers. In this session, we will introduce how to diagram other grammatical tools and how to glean grammatical principles through those diagrams. First, auxiliary verbs. As the name suggests, auxiliary verbs are attached to the front of verbs to help them, so you can draw a circle around them together with the verb like this. But, in the case of interrogative sentences, the auxiliary verb at the very front is moved in front of the subject, right? In that case, draw the separated auxiliary verb as a semicircle, like this. It's designed as a semicircle to signify that an auxiliary verb is a half-baked verb that only assists the main verb. This shape closely resembles a question mark, doesn't it? Next is relative words. You can draw relative pronouns like this, relative adjectives like this, and relative adverbs like this. As you may have noticed, it's just a slight modification using the basic shapes of noun, adjective, and adverb. By designing related concepts in a similar way, it aids memory and allows for easy drawing. Let me also introduce compound relative words, which belong to the same category. You can draw compound relative pronouns like this, compound relative adjectives like this, and compound relative adverbs like this. You can see that we've simply added the shape of a conjunction inside the shapes of relative words, right? The reason we draw it this way is that while relative clauses function as adjectives or nouns, compound relative clauses, on the other hand, function as nouns or adverbs. As you know, conjunction clauses also function as nouns or adverbs, so we add a diamond shape, which represents a conjunction, to the drawing. By drawing this diamond shape, you can remind yourself that compound relative clauses function as nouns or adverbs, just like conjunction clauses. Moving on, let me introduce interrogative words. Interrogative pronouns are drawn like this, interrogative adjectives like this, and interrogative adverbs like this. This time, we simply added a question mark on top of the 3 relative words shapes, right? Did you know that relative words, compound relative words, and interrogative words are all related? Look, this table lists all 13 relative words without exception. From here, you just add ever to all except that, and y to get a total of 11 compound relative words. And then out of these 13, you use all 12 except that, directly as interrogative words. So these 3 grammatical concepts should be grouped into one category and learned together. So, what's next? It's verbals. Verbals are verbs that are slightly modified to function as nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. However, since their origin is a verb, they can have their own objects, complements, and modifiers. Nevertheless, the key point is that they are no longer verbs. Simply put, you can think of them as a governor who is not a king but still holds some power. So, we draw a circle for the verb, but we need to distinguish it from the main verb, which is the center of the sentence. For the bare infinitive, we cut the circle like this as a sign that it's not a verb. For the to infinitive, we add an arrow shape to signify that it's not a verb, and also to indicate direction or future meaning. We mark the present participle or gerund with ing like this, and we mark the past participle with ed like this, making it resemble an e. Unlike main verbs, these verbals cannot have a formal subject and do not have the concept of tense. One of the main reasons why sentence analysis becomes difficult is the failure to distinguish between verbs and verbals. It's important to distinguish them clearly to avoid confusion, right? Now, the final element. The most important verb in a sentence has several grammatical attributes. What are they? First, we have the present tense and the past tense, right? We draw the present tense like this and the past tense like this inside the verb circle. And there's the perfect form with have plus past participle, right? We draw the perfect form like this, taking inspiration from the P in perfect. For the progressive form, we draw the I from ing like this. For the passive voice, we draw it like this, inspired by the P in passive. You know, there are various theories regarding tenses. One of them is the 12 tenses theory. The 12 tenses theory explains that based on the present, past, and future tenses, the perfect and progressive tenses are also considered tenses, and by combining them, there are a total of 12 tenses. However, I explain things based on the absolute foundation that there are only 2 tenses, present and past. In other words, there is no future tense, and neither perfect nor progressive are considered tenses. This is not a matter of right or wrong, but rather a question of which method is easier and more efficient for understanding English sentence structure. By applying this two tenses concept, most of the grammatical elements that have been frustrating us because we couldn't understand them can be understood and resolved through the lens of two tenses. Lastly, for the subjunctive mood, one of the most challenging aspects of English for learners, you can simply draw two past tense symbols like this. We don't just draw two symbols randomly, although it seems like a trick. You can grasp everything about the subjunctive mood through this shape. Let me give you a brief summary. This is explained in detail in the main lecture 7, but using ed to form the past tense in English implies a stepping back. So when time steps back, it takes on the meaning of the past like this. And when an action steps back, it takes on the meaning of the passive voice like this. Action stepping back can also imply politeness, right? Also, you know that it can be used in the sense of possibility stepping back, right? So when proposing, you should say, "Will you marry me?" instead of "Would you marry me?" because the latter makes you seem less confident and less willing to marry. Going even further, expressing that the possibility has retreated to an extreme point, close to 0%, is precisely the subjunctive mood. A representative sentence of the subjunctive mood, right? If I were a bird, I could fly to you. The general interpretation of this sentence is, if I were a bird now, I could fly to you now, right? Since we cannot become birds, instead of using the verb am here, we use the past tense were to give the meaning that the possibility has retreated to an extreme point and is not true. But think carefully, the past tense of the verb am is clearly was, right? So why on earth do we use were out of the blue? If we use was, it could be mistaken for a real past, right? Of course, in the case of this sentence, there is no room for such misunderstanding because of the clear clue if, but the past tense in other subjunctive mood sentences can be misleading. So we use the even more unexpected were to clearly express that it is not true. Now, let me get to the point since this is getting long. The key to the subjunctive mood is to express that something is not true by using a tense one step ahead. Various cases of subjunctive mood sentences can all be solved with this one fact. The real past is one symbol, and the subjunctive mood's unexpectedly one step ahead tense is two symbols. Now you understand why we distinguish them like this, right? Additionally, could here is also used as a one step ahead tense of the subjunctive mood, not the real past, right? Because it means I could fly to you now, even though I can't really fly. Then, would you like to compare it with this sentence? For the sentence, when I was young, I could run fast, we drew one symbol for could, right? It means I could run fast when I was young. This is a real past tense. Now try drawing a diagram for should in this sentence. She should have called her mom. Did you draw one symbol or two? You should draw two symbols here, right? This sentence more specifically means she should have called her mom, but she didn't. So it simply uses a should, which is one step ahead of the auxiliary verb shall, to indicate that the action of calling is not true. That's all there is to the subjunctive mood. Just using a verb or auxiliary verb one tense ahead. In other words, the core of the subjunctive mood isn't complex formulas, but rather limited to the issue of the tense of a single English word. For reference, we've already used should as a vessel to hold the meaning of not true, right? Then, there should be another vessel to additionally hold the past time of should have called in the past, right? That is the perfect form have called. It holds the past time in it. Have plus pp after an auxiliary verb exists as a means of holding past time. What I mean is, the auxiliary verb should has already been used to express that it is not true, right? So we also need to express past time. But since she should call her mom is most often used as she should call her mom in the future, this is not the past. That being said, should called or should had called are completely wrong, because the first article of English Constitution is that one clause must have only one tense, and that tense is one of the two tenses, present tense or past tense. This is incredibly important. These sentences clearly show and prove it. This is the formidable power of the two tenses theory. Since this is an introductory video, I'll stop here, but as you can see, the auxiliary verbs will, shall, can, may, must, and especially their past forms would, should, could, might, are used with so many overlapping meanings, such as stepping back, past, passive voice, politeness, decreased possibility, and even the subjunctive mood expressing something untrue, that it can be very confusing and perplexing. Furthermore, there are many inconsistencies in meaning when they are used with the root form of the verb and with have plus pp. I have summarized it very simply, and the reason this is possible is that it needs to be understood based on the two tenses theory. I have so much more to say, but since this is getting too long, please watch the main lectures. Let's wrap it up. With the shapes and symbols we've drawn together here, there are about 23 of them, right? Using these, there is no sentence structure in English that cannot be drawn. This is possible because when you look at English sentences without considering meaning, only structure, it's a very mechanical and mathematical language. In other words, if you keep drawing these 23 elements without even realizing it, the same structures will converge and be simplified into a single concept, and you will find yourself able to distinguish different structures and naturally choose the right one for the situation. Moreover, like the subjunctive mood symbol we saw earlier, you will be able to fully understand and freely manipulate the grammatical attributes of the most important verb in a sentence, including present, past, perfect, progressive, and passive voice. In addition, since there are many elements in English sentences that are omitted because they are unnecessary, the omission symbol is needed to draw all sentence diagrams, and by using modifier symbols like these to indicate the direction of modification, you can achieve even clearer meaning analysis. I sincerely hope that these Draw English introductory videos and main lectures will be of great help in improving your sentence structure analysis skills. Click subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to continue with me. Thank you.